Hey guys, Fazzy back here. An exciting video here today as we have update 5 of our NHL 25 custom roster. So I know this is one that has been asked for quite a bit. I've seen it in the comments, I've seen it on X and Twitter, and we are here to deliver it today. So once again, this is the collaboration between myself, Tactics, and Tugi. Originally, we actually did plan on having a little bit more of a gap in between roster updates, our last one being around Christmas-ish time. I believe it was Christmas Eve, actually. But there's been quite a bit of movement going on around the NHL, and it was something that we wanted to get up to date. We wanted to get it to you guys, so if you are starting a franchise mode, everything is all good and ready to go. But let's go and jump into everything you can expect from Update 5 of our NHL 25 custom roster. Starting out with updated transactions up to February 8th. So like I did previously just say, there has been so much stuff going on since we put out our last roster update. Christmas Eve all the way till February 8th, that's a good month and a half, and normally around this time of year, it's picking up right around now as we head into the trade deadline. But I think this year, it's definitely a little bit different with the Four Nations break coming up here in just a couple of days. So we've seen a bit of an early start with everything kicking off after the Mikko Rantanen trade that came out of nowhere on a random Friday night. So obviously that will now be in there. You have the JT Miller trade, you have the Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost going to Calgary. Like I said, I don't know why, but the past 2 weeks or so, it's been crazy in the NHL. There's also been a decent amount of activity when it comes to waivers, signings, everything like that. But you had a guy like Adam Boqvist going from the Panthers to the Islanders. There was a few other waiver moves, I do believe. Can't think of them off the top of my head. And then also there was a couple of signings. So a guy like Brandon Saad getting bought out from St. Louis, going to Vegas. You had the Tony DeAngelo and the John Klingberg signings, both of them which weren't in-game, which I found a little bit interesting. I thought, at least John Klingberg for sure would have been in free agency, but they were not, so they were remade for this roster update. And then obviously you just have contract extensions. I think literally like the day after we put out our last update, you had Mackenzie Blackwood signing his contract, so that's obviously now in. But you have Logan Thompson, you have Marcus Pettersson. There was a decent amount of activity, right? Ridley Gregg, I believe, was another one that signed a extension with Ottawa in the past couple of weeks. So all that is now represented in-game. It is ready for you to jump into franchise mode. Up next, you have the 2025 mid-season draft class overhaul. Definitely something that we try and improve upon each and every single update. But, this one coming right after the World Junior Championships, there was a decent amount of changes that had to be made. Especially like at the top of the draft. Earlier in the year, James Higgins was more or less a lock for number 1. Now, I think it's still likely that he ends up going number 1, but Schaefer has definitely crept into the conversation. So now, our idea was making them both 80 overall, both medium elite obviously, so that when you jump into franchise mode, you don't necessarily know what one is going to end up going first overall. And that kind of reflects real life, as we may see some interesting decisions on draft day. But also a just general consensus going through the whole entire first round. We had guys that I think maybe closer to the start of the year were looking like they were going to be locked first round picks, who have now, slightly fallen, maybe their second, maybe their third round picks. So you lower their potential, you get a lot less medium top 6 guys, so it doesn't spill too much into the second round. And then bump up the guys where you need it to try and get a accurate representation of the 2025 NHL draft. And like always, trying to add new players wherever possible. At this point, I think we have a pretty solid base of everyone that's supposed to be going in the draft class, but found a few new guys to add in there for added realism. Alright, and then just getting into the general notes rundown here. Continued rating adjustments. Obviously something that we are going to continue on each and every single update. I will say this isn't the merging of myself, Tactics, and Tugi's rating system. I'm going to have a little bit more of an update on that at the end. This is just kind of going through and giving bumps and nerfs to players that need it. Obviously, like I said, going up next, the mid-season draft overall. We already went through that. Updated transactions, went through that as well. New created players, I went into prospects, some guys coming into the 2025 NHL draft. as well as a decent chunk of alumni. Found a decent amount of players that still weren't in, so they are now included in this version, as well as various channel legends. I also went into the various Utah Hockey Club created teams. Now that we apparently do have, I don't know if it was leaked or if it was officially announced, we know what the team is likely going to be called, either the Utah HC, the Utah Outlaws, or the Utah Mammoth. So obviously the HC already in game, I don't need to waste a slot on them, but I did have the Utah Mammoth already in there. I went and applied a light blue team color to it, as well as creating an Outlaws team and applying that same light blue color branding. But that is not all for the created teams. I did end up adding Nasher's Columbus Heat team. If you didn't know, he just started up his first ever franchise mode where he's taking control of the Columbus Heat. Adding this team, it was actually kind of funny. We were supposed to have this roster update out for you guys yesterday, Friday the 7th. But after I added in the Columbus Heat, it kind of corrupted my game file. I don't know what happened, where anytime you loaded up the created team screen and you tried to save anything, it would crash the game. So now with the current version we are working on there, that is not an issue. But yeah, just a funny little story behind the Columbus Heat there. I also added in an additional Philadelphia Flyers team for 2BC. If you guys didn't know, he is running his own Flyers franchise mode currently on his channel. So I went through and tried to add a bunch of various players that have been on that team and just prospects and stuff. So if you want to control his Philadelphia Flyers, that is now an option. Who knows, maybe down the road we will run a accepting all trades run with that team. And then lastly, obviously we have the updated created team rosters. That's just so, like, let's say you have the retro Vancouver Canucks team that I made. If you wanted to substitute them out for the current day Vancouver Canucks look, you can now do that and you won't have players getting deleted. All the NHL players that are currently assigned to the NHL teams are now assigned to that various created team. And that's where I was having that issue with the game crashing on me earlier, but everything is all good and all the rosters do match up, so there is no duplicated players. But overall, I think that is more or less everything coming to update 5 of our NHL 25 custom roster. So just at the end here, did want to give a little bit of an update status on what's coming in the future here for the custom roster. And like I said earlier, we are trying to kind of merge Tugi's rating system into our own. And we've had some issues with that recently, just because of how EA has changed their own rating system and how overalls are determined. So like, for example, playmaker with really good passing is going to have more weight to that stat, which it should. And in theory, again, that's an amazing change. I think we can all agree on that. But overall, it kind of messed up the formula that he had been using. So yeah, it kind of ended up resulting in a lot of extra stats having to be weighted higher, which doesn't make everything else as accurate for players, which is kind of disappointing for sure, to say the least. But hopefully we can find some kind of workaround, and then once we eventually do, it's going to take some time to get all that stuff added in. And I'm hoping, again, we're going to have another update right after the trade deadline, so it's a month, so I'm not exactly sure when you're going to be seeing those changes. We're just going to have to play it by ear. All the three of us are very busy and don't have a ton of time all the time to be working on rosters and stuff, so we'll figure it out as it comes. But overall, I think that is more or less everything I wanted to go over here in today's video. Everything that you guys need to know about version 5 of our NHL 25 custom roster. So once again, thank you for all the support this year. It has been absolutely insane. But thanks for watching, and enjoy the custom roster.